What I've been doing since 1998, when I was on the faculty of Georgetown College in Kentucky, is interviewing people. I launched a radio program called The Meeting House, where I began to interview people about religion and American life. I've interviewed people the whole range, from atheists to archbishops and rabbis and imams and people leaving religion and people joining religion of all kinds. Authors and activists and converts. And tonight I am very pleased to interview and have a conversation with one of your church members, also a servant, a civil servant. She's not a member of the church. Did I say that wrong? She needs to be. Is that, no? Okay. Yeah. She's what? Oh, Glendale Baptist Church, yeah. Well, I don't know anything about the churches here in Nashville. But anyway, she is a public servant, works in the public defender's office for the city of Nashville. I have been very interested in the legal system for a long time. And just last week, my conversational partner is a Muslim civil rights attorney in Raleigh, North Carolina. I just put up the video of that conversation today. I'm glad to welcome to the meeting house, as we say, Georgia Sims. Come and take your seat. A graduate, I found out tonight, of Transylvania College while I was teaching at Georgetown. 20 miles away, you were a student at Transylvania.
That's right.
And did you get enough of that good bluegrass feeling while you were up there?
I got enough that I left immediately after graduation and came back to Nashville.
I think all of our band tonight are from Lexington. Is that you are? And I'm, of course, from Lexington as well. But you left Transylvania and came to Vanderbilt Law School, finishing in, when did you say?
2009.
2009, and went right to the public defender's office. Why? This is not the destination of most law students, am I not right?
That is correct, and certainly not most Vanderbilt law students. I went to law school because I generally had an interest in helping people. I didn't really know what that would look like. And I tried various internships while I was in law school, and I had an internship in the Nashville Public Defender's office while I was in law school, and just absolutely fell in love with the work. And so really it was sort of a gut decision there to say that this is what fits, this is what feels right, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
And when you were doing the internship, how long did that last?
I interned off and on for probably about 2 years while I was in law school. Mm-hmm.
And what was it about your experience there that turned you on to being a public defender?
So I have a vivid memory of pretty early in my internship experience being in a courtroom where one of our clients was entering a guilty plea to a really awful set of charges. It was one of those cases with facts that people come up to you at cocktail parties and ask, how do you represent those people? It was just an awful set of facts. And the plea was really emotional. The victims and their families were present in the courtroom. They had a lot of really hateful things to say to our clients. And it was a powerful moment, and I remember sitting in the courtroom sort of watching all of this take place and thinking, wow, this is a lot. What if I went to the other side, right? I think I'm really interested in criminal law, but what if I was a prosecutor? Would that fit better? And
fit you mean?
Fit me, mm-hmm. And I realized in that moment there was absolutely nothing that the prosecutor or that anybody in that courtroom could do that would undo the trauma that these folks had experienced. But what I could do was be present and proximate to the trauma that our client was experiencing.
And about to experience.
To witness that. Some days that's all we can do. But that person would not be alone going through that experience. And to me, that seemed like a worthwhile thing to do. That was sort of the only action item that was available in the courtroom. And that kind of sold me.
What was it about your inner makeup, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that made that attractive to you?
So I think I am somebody who has always had a deep interest in social justice generally. I think a lot of that comes from the church I was raised in at Glendale, the examples that were set for me by some of the folks that are in this room, and also that I have the ability to divorce emotion pretty easily. That's just sort of a natural piece of my personality. And so I have, I think, a skill set that makes me well suited for a highly intensely emotional job, that I can do that and sort of in some ways compartmentalize and not take that home.
I want to be clear. You have the ability to set your own personal emotions aside in order to deal with it objectively and legally, even though it was your compassion, which is an emotion, that really made this attractive to you.
I think that's right.
So you got out of law school and this experience convinced you this is what you wanted to do as a whole career. Did you anticipate 15 years? What is it, 14 years now?
Almost 15, yeah.
Almost 15. Did you anticipate 15 years plus running? Or did you think of it as a stepping stone to something else?
I didn't think of it as a stepping stone, but I did go into it thinking, I will do this until I don't want to do it anymore. I didn't have a plan to do anything else, but I also didn't go into it necessarily thinking, this is forever and I'm signing up for forever.
That sounds like some ministers I know too. We're going to hang in there as long as we can.
And I think that's, I encourage new folks that come into our office to try to have that same mindset, because I think if we set ourselves up thinking that there's 30 years here, it can be really difficult to recognize when that time has come and we are no longer being effective and need to step back. And so if we have a mindset where, if this is fulfilling me today, I'm going to do this today. And if tomorrow that changes, then we'll deal with that tomorrow.
Are you worried about burnout?
Always.
Always.
Yes, both for myself and for the folks that I work with.
Tell us about the folks you work with. I assume you mean your clients.
Well, I mean, actually, in that context, I mean the other lawyers and staff at our office. We have a staff of about 110, and my current role is to serve as our training director and also serve in our executive leadership team.
Wait a minute. A staff of 110, how many of these are attorneys?
About 55 or so.
55 attorneys? That is amazing.
It's not enough, but yes.
It's not enough.
It is more than when I started, which is great.
Tell us about your clients.
So I would say that my clients, they are the reason that I continue to do the job. My roles have changed over the years, but I find that connecting with the folks that I have the privilege of representing is the thing that drives me to continue doing the work. They are all poor. They are mostly all folks who have been victims of trauma, multiple layers of trauma. Many of them have mental health conditions. Many of them suffer from substance use issues. Many of them are, all of them are folks who would not be in the criminal legal system but for some other system in the community failing them.
I want you to say that again and expand on it.
So my clients come to me not because they are bad people that make bad decisions. They are people who other systems have failed. Whether that's the education system, whether that is the mental health system, whether that is the public health system, because I think substance use falls in a public health issue and not in a willful, maladaptive behavior issue. There are a multitude of systems that have failed the folks that then come to me.
Including the family system.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of, there's a lot of research and there's a lot of just sort of lived experiences that show us that those familial systems fail because of generational trauma and because of ways other systems have failed families for generations back.
Yes, I've read recently cases where people who've grown up in that had a self-determination to break that cycle in their own life. I think that takes a determination. Do you ever run into people like this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody that I represent has self-determination to break the cycles they've been part of. I think that the problem is we, as an American culture, focus on those few success stories and make that about individual self-determination instead of the minute exception to the rule, which is that the systems that are in place continue to perpetuate the same cycles of harm. And so we look to folks and say, oh, you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. How amazing for you. Not understanding that is not a failure on other folks' parts not to do that. But that's just not really available for folks. And it is a miracle when folks are able to pull themselves out.
So you're describing your clients basically as poor people who have been victimized by other systems that they're in, as you mentioned several, about to be, would you say, victimized again?
Absolutely. I mean, I think our criminal legal system, in my opinion, does vastly more harm to the folks that become entrapped in it. Rehabilitation, while we have recently put a much greater emphasis on programs and problem-solving courts, we call them, to promote rehabilitation. The simple fact is involvement in the criminal legal system is not typically an indicator that somebody is going to be rehabilitated.
That's for sure. So when they come into your office, how do they get to be your clients to begin with?
So a couple of different ways. Folks can walk in and say, I've been charged with a crime and I need a lawyer, if they have been able to secure their own release out of custody. A lot of our clients come to us because they are unable to pay their way out of custody. When folks are arrested in Nashville, the Tennessee legal system sets a cash bail. And what that means is that an amount of money is set, and if they have the money to pay it, they will get out, and then they get to be free as they come to their court dates. If they cannot afford to pay it, they will sit in jail. We automatically represent folks who are in jail because the presumption is if you had the money to pay to get out, you would.
Now, there is a movement across the country to do away with cash bail.
Yes.
Is that something you would support?
Absolutely. Yes. And I can see, not just because I think it's unfair, just fundamentally unfair.
For poor people to have to stay in jail while people with money can get out.
Correct. I think it also violates our constitutional idea of this presumption of innocence, right? If we are presuming folks innocent, then we should give them the opportunity to not be criminalized, right? Not to be treated as if they are a criminal before they have been proven to be a criminal, right? And so if we are allowing folks who have money to retain that presumption of innocence, and we do not allow folks who are poor to have that, I think that's a big problem. I also can tell that, both anecdotally in the cases that I see, but also research shows us that within the first 3 days, if somebody's incarcerated for 3 days, right, at the point that we hit 3 days, statistically speaking, job loss goes up, housing loss goes up. The chances of recidivism go up if we just keep folks in jail even 72 hours. And those are really troubling statistics if we are thinking that we are using the system for rehabilitation.
Yes, I remember a case where a person was arrested for non-payment of child support, kept in jail for 6 months.
Yep.
It's hard to see how that helps.
We do that in Davidson County.
Yeah.
People can't afford to pay to get out, And so their punishment is that they stay in jail. We also suspend people's driver's licenses, or we did, for non-payment of child support. Correct.
What's the solution to this?
You
want to run for public office?
Right?
Here?
No, I don't actually.
Not in Tennessee.
So, I mean, this is not an answer to your question, but I think the solution is hard, and that is the reason that we use the criminal justice system, or the criminal legal system, as many of us call it, because whether there's justice in it is debatable, right? But we use the criminal legal system as a stopgap. Okay, there are not enough treatment beds for folks who have acute mental illness. You know who can't turn them away? The jail. There are not enough substance use treatment facilities. Who can't turn them away? The jail. When problems are hard and they are interconnected in our social world, we have a hard time figuring out how to solve them. And so the criminal legal system has become, by default, our solution to poverty, to folks who are unhoused, and to folks who have, a lot of challenges that are better solved through a public health system than would be in the criminal legal system.
And I want to go back to the question. You said, how many public defenders, lawyers are in your office?
I think we have about 55.
This seems like a lot to me, but it's not enough.
So you're touching on really a sort of a big national conversation right now. There is a perception that is true, depending on your jurisdiction. There's a perception that public defenders are overworked and underpaid and under-resourced. And that is generally true if we think about that in relation to the ways that we resource law enforcement and all of that comes with it, the police departments, the TBI, all of those things. The amount of resources that it would take to equitably resource public defenders and defense counsel generally, based on the way that we resource law enforcement, is frankly astronomical. And it's a number, I don't think there's enough lawyers in the state of Tennessee that could provide the quality of legal services that folks deserve. And that's why we have a two-tiered justice system. We have a quality of representation that folks who can afford to pay a lawyer get, and we have a quality of representation that folks who have to rely on the public defense system. Now, I'm really proud of my office. I think we do excellent work. I think our lawyers are caring and compassionate, and we work really, really hard. And we do a great job for our clients. But I don't think you can resource us well enough to deal with the demand for our services. And that comes back to sort of a conversation that is happening nationally about workloads in the public defender community and what that means for resources. And my personal opinion, and let me be very clear that I'm speaking as myself and not as an opinion of the Nashville Public Defender's Office, is that because we cannot resource in the way that we need to for what people constitutionally deserve, we have to deal with the demand issue. And that means we have to think about decarceration. We have to think about I would much rather us put that money, instead of it going to new lawyers in my office, into better social services, into better mental health treatment, better substance use treatment, instead of paying us more money to hire more lawyers. And we never see these folks, right? But
it is to deal with the problem literally before it gets to your office. Absolutely. Dealing with the mental health issues, poverty issues, school issues, even family issues.
Right. And thinking about if we have a finite amount of resources, which we do. I mean, our community has a finite amount of money. What do we want to spend that money on? Do we want to spend that money on prosecuting people for driver's license crimes, for marijuana use, for any number of other things that you can name? Or do we want to spend that money on prosecuting people who commit violent crimes and that we need to address in some way?
While you were a student at Transylvania and I was teaching at Georgetown, I had the privilege of being the host in Lexington of 7 judges who were here on the Fulbright program. I had to put together a 4-day program for them. And I took them to meet the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who happened to be a Georgetown graduate. We went to Keeneland, which turned out to be the governor's day. We got to meet the governor. But one of the things I did was introduce them to one of the regional directors of public defense in the state of Kentucky. And of all the things that we did, that was of most interest to these judges. They were from Greece and India, Armenia, Africa, Tanzania, because most of them did not have that in their country. They were fascinated by our whole network of public defenders, which of course is driven by the Constitution, that everybody has a right to be represented in court. And yet, you've been at this now 15 years. What is your ambition? Where do you want to go from here?
I don't think I want to go anywhere else. You know, I'm still on a day-to-day sometimes, but I love what I do. I really enjoy just being able to directly represent clients every day.
You want to run the department?
No.
Is that politicized?
It is. That is an elected position in Nashville.
The head of the public defenders is elected by the public?
Yes. All of our judges are elected, our public defender is elected, our district attorney is elected.
You know, these 7 judges that I met with were astounded that our judges in America are elected.
That's a whole separate conversation.
It is a whole different conversation.
There's good and bad with both systems, I think.
It is.
But no, I don't have I don't have interest in being a political figure. And also that's a job that requires managing the office and not doing what I love the most, which
You like to go in the courtroom.
I like being in the courtroom.
You like to sit down with clients, go over their options.
I like learning people's stories. I like learning who they are, really, and not what a piece of paper says about them. And I like earning their trust. I always tell my clients when I meet them, you don't trust me right now and you shouldn't. If you told me right now you trust me, I would tell you that that's a very bad idea and you shouldn't do that. But I hope to earn your trust over the course of our representation. And that's what drives me. I also really enjoy training our new lawyers. I like watching them have successes and making those connections as well.
Do you have interns now?
I do.
And do you talk to them and try to inspire them to go into this?
I do. I talk to them about internships as a discernment process. And so part of the way I've structured our intern program is to include pieces where they are intentionally reflecting on what they've seen, what they've experienced, and what that means. Because I tell them all the time that I absolutely, I want people who are inspired to be public defenders. I also want you to know what the job really is. And so I don't want to hire you if 6 months from now you're going to be like, I didn't know that this is what the job was and this is not what I want to do. And I think an internship is a great opportunity to discern and to figure out, is this where my skills fit?
You're a white woman.
I am.
How many of these 55 public defenders are white women?
A lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot.
Is your clientele largely female or male, or black or white?
So in Nashville, we arrest and detain and incarcerate black people above the rates that they make up our city population. We predominantly arrest and detain men, and so we skew towards to men and to black men.
I've also noticed you kick black people out of the state legislature, if I remember right.
Some of us, those were our legislators that got kicked out.
And then got reelected.
Yes.
Talk to me about the racial dynamic here in your office, in your clients.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing for public defenders generally, not just white folks, but public defenders generally, to do personal work on being anti-racist and learning about the history of race in this country and how racism has not only impacted but really driven a lot of what we are doing in the criminal legal system. It is not just an individual, we can all think of examples of racial profiling in the police force and sort of examples of how, there was a study released in Nashville, it may have been close to 10 years ago, titled Driving While Black, that demonstrated a significant overuse of stops and searches for black drivers as compared to white drivers in the city of Nashville. There's lots of examples of that, but it's really important for our staff and anybody who is working with the folks that we work with to understand the ways that the criminal legal system was in some ways created and some ways perpetuated in order to impose and maintain white supremacy.
Wow, that's another whole conversation,
It is.
isn't it?
It is.
And a big one.
And
Georgia, thanks for being in the meeting house with me today.
it's been great.
I've been talking with Georgia Sims, public defender in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Dwight Moody in the meeting house, where we have conversation on religion and American life. I'll be back in just a minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you.